Right now, at this very moment, the world's most important waterway is closed. Not threatened. Not partially disrupted. Closed. Over 400 ships are sitting at anchor outside the Strait of Hormuz, stranded, unable to move. Oil has hit $126 a barrel. And the United States, the most powerful military on the planet, launched a war to fix this problem. So far, it hasn't worked. This is the Strait of Hormuz crisis, and it is the biggest energy catastrophe since the 1970s oil embargo. Here's what really happened, why the US is struggling to reopen it, and what it means for every single person watching this video. To understand how we got here, we need to go back not decades this time, but just 3 weeks. Because what's happening right now didn't start in 2026. It started with a chain of events stretching back to 2023 that finally exploded on February 28th of this year. Here's the geography first, because it matters more than anything else. The Strait of Hormuz is 33 kilometers wide at its narrowest point. The actual navigable shipping lanes? 6 kilometers total, 2 lanes, each barely 3 kilometers wide. The world's largest supertankers have to use these lanes in single file. Now here's what the map also tells you instantly: Iran controls the entire northern coastline. Every ship leaving the Persian Gulf passes within drone strike distance of Iranian territory. For years, analysts warned this was the world's most dangerous choke point, and that Iran's nuclear program, combined with escalating US-Israeli pressure, was a collision course waiting to happen. 3 days later, that window closed. And the world changed. On the surface, the story seemed simple. The US and Israel hit Iran. Iran closed the strait. Oil prices exploded. America is trying to reopen it. Most people assume this is a temporary standoff, that the US will flex its military muscle, Iran will back down, and ships will flow again within days. Here's what's really happening and why that assumption is dangerously wrong. The real reason behind this war goes deeper than one airstrike. By January 2026, Iran had killed thousands of its own citizens during the largest internal protest since the 1979 revolution. Trump threatened military action over the crackdown. Then on February 26, just 48 hours before the strikes, the IAEA confirmed Iran had produced 55 kilograms of weapons-grade uranium enriched to over 90% purity. Enough, according to analysts, for 2 to 3 nuclear weapons. On February 24, during the State of the Union address, Trump publicly warned Iran that the US was prepared to act. 1 day later, Iran's foreign minister said peace was within reach. And then, on February 27 at 3:38 p.m. Washington time, Trump, flying on Air Force One, gave the order. Operation Epic Fury had begun. Within 24 hours, Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, the man who had ruled Iran for 35 years, was dead. The strikes hit nuclear facilities, military bases, air defense systems, and senior leadership simultaneously across Iran. It was the largest concentration of US military power in the Middle East since the 2003 Iraq invasion. Here's where it gets genuinely fascinating and deeply alarming. You might expect that a country with its military under attack would struggle to shut down the world's most critical shipping lane. Iran didn't need a naval battle to do it. On March 2, a senior IRGC official broadcast a single message on maritime radio channels: any ship attempting to cross the Strait of Hormuz would be set ablaze. Within hours, no naval blockade, no mines, no missiles fired, yet tanker traffic collapsed by 70%. Why? Because shipping companies didn't need to wait to find out if the threat was real. Insurance companies immediately pulled war risk coverage for the strait. And without insurance, no captain and no shipping company will risk a $100 million supertanker carrying 2 million barrels of oil through a war zone. No captain and no shipping company will risk a $100 million supertanker carrying 2 million barrels of oil through a war zone. Iran then followed through. As of March 12, Iran carried out 21 confirmed attacks on merchant ships. The Thai bulk carrier Mayuri Nari was hit on March 11. The message to the shipping world was clear: this is not a bluff. This is the question everyone is asking. The United States has the most powerful navy in history. Why can't it just reopen a 33-kilometer strait? The answer is one of the most important military lessons of the 21st century, and it explains why American senators are publicly saying the US had no plan. First, geography. Iran's coastline runs along the entire northern edge of the strait. Its missile batteries, drone launch sites, and fast attack boats are dug into mountainous terrain overlooking the shipping lanes from above. The US Navy would have to escort every single tanker through a gauntlet that Iran controls from the high ground. Second, the coalition problem. Trump publicly called on China, France, Japan, South Korea, the UK, and others to send warships to join a naval escort mission. The response? On March 16, NATO allies in Europe formally rejected the request. Trump called it a very foolish mistake. Not one country has publicly committed naval vessels to the mission. Why won't allies join? Because as Middle East security analyst Roger Shanahan told Al Jazeera, most US allies opposed this war from the start. They were given no consultation before the strikes. And they now face a near-impossible military ask, escorting ships through a narrow S-curve waterway while Iran fires drones and mines from the coastline above. Third, Iran's selective gatekeeping. Here's the part that almost no one is reporting. Iran hasn't fully closed the strait to everyone. It's operating as a geopolitical weapon with surgical precision. China, India, Turkey, Pakistan, their ships are being allowed through, one by one, with Iranian permission. China, which receives 45% of its oil through the Strait of Hormuz, is actively negotiating with Tehran for safe passage. India has already had 2 LNG tankers allowed through. This is Iran turning the strait into a diplomatic weapon, rewarding countries that stay neutral and punishing those who support the US. Let's talk about the real-world cost, because this is why this matters to you, whether you're in America, Europe, or Asia. Before the war, Brent crude was around $65 a barrel. By March 8, just 8 days into the conflict, it broke $100 for the first time in 4 years. It peaked at $126. Analysts at major trading firms warn it could hit $200 if the closure becomes permanent. But it's not just gasoline prices. Iraq, a US ally and OPEC's second largest producer, is being forced to shut down its own oil fields because with the strait closed, it has nowhere to put the oil it pumps. Qatar's LNG facility, which supplies 20% of the world's liquefied natural gas, was struck by Iranian missiles. European countries that rely on Qatari LNG for winter heating are watching their energy markets spiral. The IMF and World Bank have already begun modeling what a prolonged closure would do to the global economy, and the numbers are catastrophic. We're talking about the biggest energy supply shock since the 1970s oil embargo, except this time, global supply chains are far more interconnected and far more fragile. This explains why Trump told a reporter, "Oil prices will drop like a rock as soon as it's over." The problem is nobody knows when it will be over. Let me bring this home for you. Because you might be wondering, why does a narrow waterway in the Persian Gulf affect my daily life? The Fertilizer Institute has reported that nearly 50% of global urea exports transit through the Strait of Hormuz. Urea is the primary component of fertilizer. Less fertilizer means higher food prices globally within months. Over 40,000 seafarers are currently stranded on vessels unable to transit the strait. 6 major cruise ships with 15,000 passengers are stuck in the Persian Gulf. And major airlines Emirates, Qatar Airways, British Airways, Lufthansa have suspended Middle East routes after Iranian missile strikes hit Dubai and Abu Dhabi airports. And this is just week 3. If this lasts months, and analysts are increasingly saying it might, the cascading effects on global food supply, energy prices, and manufacturing costs will be felt in every household on Earth. Now, to be intellectually honest, some analysts argue the US-Israeli strategy is working on its own terms, even if the strait crisis is real. Writing in Al Jazeera, one analyst argues that Iran's ballistic missile arsenal has been significantly degraded, that 80% of Iran's capacity to strike Israel has been eliminated, and that the IRGC command structure has been severely disrupted. The US is now flying non-stealth B-1 bombers over Iranian airspace, a signal of near-total air dominance. Others point out that Iran's new supreme leader, Mujtaba Khamenei's son, appointed in an unprecedented dynastic transfer, represents institutional fragility, not strength. Some analysts believe the regime may be closer to collapse than it appears. Critics of the war, including U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders and the Stimson Center, argue it is unconstitutional, launched without congressional approval, and unlikely to achieve its stated goals. No airstrike campaign in history has successfully toppled a government on its own.